They did it! Yes! What's cracking, everybody, and welcome back to Kraken R&R as the Seattle Kraken win 4-0 over the Florida Panthers, snapping the 8-game losing streak. I don't know what it is about this team and beating good Florida Panthers teams when they're playing bad, but I'm not going to complain. They did it twice in the inaugural season, and now they snap their 8-game losing streak with a shutout win, Joey Daccord's first NHL shutout against the Panthers at home. Oh, I mean, for as unfun as the games are where I expect the Kraken to win and they end up losing and then I have to do a video after it, these ones where going into this game, I didn't think there was a chance the Kraken were winning it, and then they end up winning it in decisive shutout fashion. Yeah, these ones are definitely the most fun. I mean, sure, it is hockey, and maybe more so than any other sport, anything can happen any given night. Either team could end up winning the game, but especially given how these two teams were playing coming into this game, yeah, I didn't think for a second before this game started that the Kraken had a chance to win it. I was just ready to focus on a game where I would watch mostly the younger players and see how they were developing and just the team in general, hoping that they could at least make it entertaining and that they wouldn't have what happened to Florida happen to them. And I mean, honestly, after how the game against the Wild went, I might have settled for the Kraken getting shut out if it was at least entertaining to watch at points, which that game certainly wasn't. I'm sure Wild fans at least enjoyed the win, and Panthers fans probably aren't overly happy after this game, but it was at least an entertaining game to watch at both ends of the ice. Both teams had great chances, and for that matter, especially for a game between two teams that only face twice a year and won't see each other until next season, unless they face in the Stanley Cup Final, which is fairly unlikely, it had a good amount of physicality as well. I mean, shoot, I even had a fun fact about not-so-fun Kraken events lined up for the team had they ended up losing this game, which now, because they won, they've completely ruined, and I'm not disappointed about that, but if you're interested, I can still share it at the end of the video. But for now, let's get back to focusing on this incredible breath of fresh air of a win for this team. Lineup-wise for the Kraken, maybe surprisingly after how things went in the game against the Wild, there are no changes coming into this one. Daccord stays in net, and Schultz once again is scratched for Ryker Evan staying in the defensive lineup, which, based on how he's been playing, is not going to change anytime soon. That is to say, Schultz will probably find his way back into the lineup, but Evans is going to be a starter for the foreseeable future. Now, as we do get into the game, if we're being perfectly honest, the Kraken don't necessarily start this one on time, at least certainly not from a skating perspective anyway. Thankfully, the one Kraken player that did show up right from opening puck drop was Joey Daccord, as if it isn't for him, within the first few minutes of this game, it would have become the 9th straight game that they got scored on first, as he makes a spectacular, sprawling spread eagle toe save on a breakaway chance from Ekblad. Well, it wasn't really a breakaway chance. It actually starts as kind of a 3-on-1 and then develops into more of a 2-on-1 as Tanev and Beniers get back into the play. Ryker Evans is the lone defenseman back for the Kraken, and for what it's worth, Evans played this almost perfectly. He goes right down the middle, making sure to cut off any potential passing lanes, and then as they get closer to the net and it becomes more clear that Ekblad is going to have to take the shot, he pinches towards the net to make sure that Ekblad can't just wrap it right around Joey. Now, Daccord ends up making the save anyway, but Evans was in position to try to prevent that wraparound over Joey's leg, or past Joey's leg. Even having survived that, though, it's not much longer before Larson gets caught for a hold, or they end up calling it interference. Either way, the Panthers head to their first power play of the game, which the Kraken kill off fantastically, not even allowing a shot on goal, or certainly not a dangerous one at the very least. And actually, that was a theme over the course of the night. The Panthers would end up with 3 power plays in this game, and the best scoring opportunity or best shot on goal that came out of all 3 of those was a Tanev shorthanded one in their last power play towards the middle of the second period. So a great night against a good power play for the Kraken on the kill, and that is a big part of the reason that helps get them to this shutout for Daccord. And actually, it might have been this first kill for the Kraken that really helped them settle into this game, as they played it aggressively and confidently, 2 things that can't necessarily be said about even their 5-on-5 play over a good chunk of this 8-game losing streak. And really for the Kraken, following this kill throughout the rest of the first period, even though by the end of it they are getting outshot 9-3, it was a pretty back and forth remainder of this first. Really, the best chances for the Panthers were those couple that they got, especially that Ekblad one in the first couple of minutes, and following this kill from the Kraken, they really did settle into this game. And even when it comes to that shot total of 3 for the Kraken and 9 for the Panthers, it did feel like a pretty even first period back and forth. The Kraken just weren't able to get their chances to the net. There were some good blocks by the Panthers and a couple of shots that just didn't quite get on net. And it did also take them a few minutes into the second period to get their first scoring chance and shot on goal of that period as well. But once they did, it was a good one. As Bellemare fights off a forecheck to get a puck to Borgen, free in the defensive zone, Borgen surveys the landscape in front of him and then sees Yamamoto wide open at the opposing blue line, fires off the pass. Yamamoto, released on the breakaway, skates in, backhand to forehand, roofs it, and the Kraken have scored first for the first time in 9 games. Woo! It finally happened. After playing from behind all of these games in a row, the Kraken finally have a 1-0 lead. In fact, in this 8-game losing streak, they only had a lead once entirely to speak of, so just having a lead in general feels really good at this point. And for Yamamoto, it's his 4th of the season, as the 4th line puts the Kraken on the board first. And look, players are usually excited about goals, but if this face from Yamamoto doesn't tell you that they, just like the fans, were especially relieved to finally be the team that scored first, I don't know what will. And then, following the Yamamoto goal, the Daccord line gets right back into the offensive zone off the faceoff. They create a good chance, a shot on net, rebounds out to Tolvanen right in front of it. He tries to spin it around past the toe of Bobrovsky on the far side, but Bobrovsky is able to get his toe to that far post, making a pretty nice save of his own, robbing Tolvanen and keeping the Kraken from making it 2-0. And with that save, the Panthers are able to kind of calm things down for the next couple of minutes, and it's not too much longer before they get their almost back-to-back power plays here in the middle part of the second, both of which, like I said already, the Kraken do a fantastic job of killing off. Great work on the penalty kill, not allowing too much as far as dangerous opportunities for the Panthers. And again, the best shot is late in the second power play here in the second, the 3rd overall for the Panthers, where Tanev has a sneaky shot on I don't know, not really breakaway. It's a one-on-one chance that he just kind of fires off a little sneaky shot. Bobrovsky makes that save, and then not long after that power play comes to an end, in fact, almost immediately after that power play comes to an end for the Panthers, the Kraken get their lone chance on the power play and actually do get a couple of shots off, but aren't able to score either. And eventually we do end up getting to the end of the second period, with the Kraken still leading 1-0. Not that the Panthers didn't try to tie it up late. They do have one more flurry of a couple good chances, which Daccord comes up with another good save on and gets a little bit of help from the plumbing around him. And the Kraken do survive that to maintain the lead into the third. Of course, though, as we all know, the Kraken have not necessarily played their best hockey so far this season when they have a lead in the third period, especially entering the third period with a lead. They tend to be a lot more timid and just trying not to make mistakes, while inevitably making a mistake and costing them back the other way. In this third period, though, they came out as a team on a mission and played the best period of all 3 of them in this third, as they end up really looking like an aggressive team that was trying to fight back from being behind and are even better offensively than they had been in the previous 2. Now, I wouldn't necessarily say they were the crisper of the 2 teams. The Panthers' passing was tape to tape almost constantly, while the Kraken still had a couple of errant passes here and there, but even when their passes did miss the mark or there was a turnover, unlike what we've seen in especially these last 8 games of the losing streak, they didn't allow those turnovers to cost them. For one thing, they weren't making stupid turnovers and bad decisions in their defensive end, being very responsible with the puck there. And when the Panthers did have the puck in the Kraken end of the ice, they were doing a very good job of collapsing to the middle and not allowing the Panthers to get any sort of second opportunities or really even first opportunities from those dangerous areas, the slot or right out in front of the net. Just kind of letting the Panthers have the outside, and when they were on the outside, still sending at least one guy to go attack and try to break things up. And as far as back the other way is concerned, again, the transitions weren't always the cleanest, but they did get into the offensive end with relative consistency, and when they did, they were able to generate some chances, continuing to be aggressive, defensemen pinching down into the lower levels of the offensive end to try to create that offense, and not just sitting on their heels playing, I don't know, turtle mode hockey, trying to protect that 1-goal lead more than anything else. And eventually, it is that aggressive play in the offensive end, specifically from a defenseman, that gets them the 2nd goal of the game and that 2-0 lead. As Bellemare wins a faceoff in the offensive end out to Yamamoto, Yamamoto gets it to Evans, and then Evans just takes the puck down along the boards all the way behind the net, and then I'm not convinced that he was actually going for the pass here and not just trying a wraparound shot, but it turns into a pass either way, right out into the slot for Bellemare, and he fires off the shot, burying it into the back of the net. Really no chance for Bobrovsky. A perfect pass from Evans. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt and say that he was trying to pass it. It's his first NHL point. Belmar his third of the season, and the Kraken have a multi-goal lead. But even with that being said, and even if things are starting to feel pretty good here with a multi-goal lead midway through the third, it also feels far from over, with still plenty of time for the Panthers to come back, a team that is very capable of scoring in a hurry. And we also know from earlier on this season how this team has played after having a 2-0 lead. In fact, they blew one of those 2-0 leads to this same Panthers team earlier on this season. But thankfully, those fears about a potential comeback from the Panthers are eased, at least a fair amount anyway, when a couple minutes later, the Kraken get a 2-on-1 break the other way. It's Wennberg with the puck. He's got Tanev on the other side. He's staring Tanev down for a pass the entire way. But the last second, he winds up and actually fires off a shot. And not only that, he scores to give the Kraken the 3-0 lead. Wennberg shoots the puck and buries it, as he, like Yamamoto before him, picks up his fourth of the season on his bobblehead night as well. So a good night for Wennberg to score, and gives the Kraken that 3-0 lead. Again, the first 3-0 lead, or even 3-goal lead, that they've had since that game against the Sharks, way back since all of this terrible losing streak began. And then, as if all of this wasn't enough of a breath of fresh air, and had the crowd really excited at this point in the game, finally feeling like it was inevitable that the Kraken were going to get this win and break the losing streak, they continue to pressure offensively throughout the next few minutes of this game, not just letting the Panthers run them into the offensive end and starting to play defense first with a 3-goal lead late in the third. They keep the pressure on, continue to be aggressive, and not giving the Panthers any time to collect themselves and try to mount an effort back the other way. Which honestly, they keep up all the way throughout the rest of 5-on-5 until actually before the 5-minute mark. There's still more than 5 minutes left in the game. I think it was something like 5 minutes and 15 seconds, or maybe even more than that, when the Panthers pull Bobrovsky very early to try to get themselves back into this and get a chance to score those 3 goals that they need to force this one to get to overtime. But they never end up getting any of them. Eventually, after a couple of chances, the Kraken do hit the empty net, and I usually don't bother with screenshots of empty net goals, but it's a pretty nice one from Tolvanen as he fights it into the offensive end, and then from the boards just kind of whacks at it, and it rainbows over, bounces in front of the net, and goes in to give the Kraken that 4th goal of the game, as they continue to only win when they score 4 goals, even if they let up none the other way. So then all that was left was to make sure that they didn't give up that goal, and Daccord gets his first career shutout, which he does to the delight of the entire home crowd, who throughout the last 30 seconds were chanting Joey, 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 and he absolutely appreciated that and noted it after the game that it was good to hear the fan support, especially after how everything has been going here over this last stretch of games. And on top of that, he also mentioned that he did have one chance with the puck on his stick behind the Kraken net while the net was still empty and Bobrovsky was on the Panthers bench. And he said that it wasn't a particularly good chance for him to try and shoot it, so he opted not to. But he did make sure to mention that if he has a chance to shoot at an empty net, he will do it. Actually, for what it's worth, he also mentioned that when he had that puck on his stick with the empty net, or sometime around that time, Larson skated past him, kind of giving him a little eye like, I know you want to try it, are you going to do it? And obviously he didn't. He made the smart decision at that point. He had his net in front of him, between him and the opposing net at the other end, and was still, even if the score was 3-0, protecting the shutout, which I think he was pretty happy to have that first NHL shutout. And that's maybe not quite as special as a goalie goal, but better not risk it. So anyway, in the end with this one, obviously it's just a complete, as I've said a couple of times, breath of fresh air for this team. You could tell in the locker room that it was a huge weight lifted off of their shoulders, getting this losing streak behind them. And now they can try to ride this momentum into a game against a not so good Blackhawks team, and not also have the weight of trying to get that first win against a team that they should beat. And obviously, when asked, players will say the right things and say that they take each game one at a time, and that it doesn't matter who the opponent is or what's happened before. But the vibes in the locker room were much better than they have been throughout this entire losing streak, for obvious reasons. It's usually a lot better when they win games, but it was clearly starting to weigh on them that this was slipping away from them one loss at a time. And even if they had been playing well in parts of those games, the results still weren't there, and the results, as Belmar said, are all that matter. So to now have that weight lifted off their shoulders, especially against a good Panthers team that was playing well, should allow them to play a little bit more freely against a Chicago team that otherwise, especially if they had the weight of trying to break a losing streak playing against a team they should beat, it should allow that to be a little bit less of a trap game coming up here on Thursday. So then I suppose the obvious question at this point is, what did the Kraken do differently in this game that they hadn't been doing over the course of this losing streak to get this win against a good team in the Panthers, like I've already said a couple of times, and also a team that played pretty well in this game? They certainly had their opportunities, and part of that is that Daccord was fantastic in net, obviously his best game of the season. Of course, it also certainly helps Daccord when his team plays well defensively in front of him, which, aside from those first couple of minutes where Daccord did have to make that spectacular save, they very much did in this game. And honestly, I feel like it's something they've been doing for the most part in large chunks of at least the last couple of games, where they've done a good job when in their end of the ice, when the opposing team has the puck, of keeping things to the outside, and when shots do come, collapsing to the middle and not allowing those secondary opportunities from dangerous areas right around the net off of rebounds, or even primary chances from the slot or around the net. They've been forcing things mostly the outside and also clearing guys out from in front of the goaltender to prevent screen shots from going in on top of that. Now, obviously, over the last couple of games during this losing streak, even if they have been playing well while the other team has the puck in their end of the ice, they have not always been good with the puck themselves, with a number of pretty bad defensive zone turnovers that then have led to goals, which they definitely cleaned up in this game. There were no bad defensive zone turnovers in this one. There were a couple of times where they did fail to get it across the blue line and clear the zone, which has also cost them a couple of times, but didn't in this one, so that's good news as well. Of course, though, the defense and goaltending are just a couple of pieces of the puzzle, a couple important pieces, but it's just part of the picture of a good, complete win like this one. There's also the transition game, which was something the Kraken really took advantage of last season to get all of the scoring they had there, and also did in this game. There's the breakaway goal for Yamamoto in the second period, and then the 2-on-1 goal for Wenberg in the third. And just in the offensive end in general, it was very nice to see the Kraken, even if it took them a while throughout the game to really get things going and have consistent offensive zone pressure. Once they did, well, for one, it happened with a lead starting out that third period, and then they continued to show that pressure and poise in the offensive end, eventually leading to that goal with the pass from Evans out to Belmar as he scored. So really clicking on all phases of the game, and for what it's worth, with a lot of people, especially with how things have been going, really missing guys like Geeky, Donato, and Sprong, that fourth line from last year. Well, here you go. The fourth line scoring twice in this game, both of them I should say, Yamamoto and Belmar both getting a goal and an assist in this game. Sure, doesn't end up getting on the board, but he did have a couple of shots on goal, so I think it's pretty safe to say that that fourth line was the most effective for the Kraken, at least in the offensive end, and even with limited minutes. Anyway, I could go on and on about the things the Kraken did well in this game, and honestly, I'm kind of tempted to after how things have gone here over the last 8, or really the majority of this season to this point, but they play a fantastic 60-minute game here. Again, the not great start in the first period, but Daccord bails them out there. Then they even things out and really show up offensively in the third, which was nice to see given that they came in with a lead and just didn't turtle up and try to avoid losing. They actually went out to win the game in the third, and that's just what they did. Daccord his first shutout, Evans his first point. For now, though, we'll move on to the Kraken 3 stars, and then I'll get to that fun fact that I promised at the beginning of the video that is no longer valid after the Kraken won this game. But with the Kraken 3 stars, as always, again, these are brought to you by the patrons over on Patreon. If you do want to be a part of helping decide the Kraken 3 stars, and this is a game where I did need help deciding, you can do that by helping support the channel a little bit more than you already are by watching to this point, by going to the link down below to Patreon and helping support there as well. Now, this one is going to be difficult. I really wish that I could give out more than 3 stars. 4 or 5 would be pretty easy after a game like this, and I suppose it is just our stars here on the channel. No one's really counting, and I could give out more, but that kind of defeats the purpose of 3 stars. Michael did point out that I didn't give out any stars in the last game, so I could give out 6 this time. He gave 3 to Daccord and then 1 to each of 3 other guys, which points for creativity, but I think I will stick with just 1 star for each of 3 different guys here. Obviously, Joey Daccord is the first star. His first NHL shutout, again, really bailed the Kraken out in that first period early on, making sure that they didn't get scored on for the first time in 9 straight games. And who knows, maybe that was the catalyst to the rest of that game. Even aside from that, though, it was a well-deserved shutout for Daccord. He was fantastic throughout this game, even if the team did start to play a little bit better defensively in front of him throughout the rest of it and didn't force him to work as hard as he did, especially on that save. He had one other one towards the end of the second period that was pretty good as well, but generally they made it somewhat easy on him. Just 24 shots that he ends up having to save. Still, saving all of them is a pretty impressive feat in the NHL, especially against a team like the Panthers. So Daccord, an easy first star. Second star, I'm going to go with Pierre-Edouard Bellemare. I have a pretty hard time deciding between him and Yamamoto, and I'll get to why I had to decide between the two of them for the second star. But Bellemare gets a goal and an assist in this game, plus wins the faceoff for what ended up being his goal. And just in general, I have to take advantage of when I can get Bellemare a star, since he doesn't play a ton here when it comes to minutes in games and hasn't even been playing every game of late. But this is a guy that I think has had a very big impact on this team this season. And I know things have been going fantastic, but this is a team that, even with everything that went well last year, we all know it was well documented how bad they were when it came to winning faceoffs. And they have really flipped that on its head so far this season. Especially guys like Matty Beniers, even if he's had struggles elsewhere, has been night and day better in the faceoff circle, and that all I think is pretty easy to trace back to the pickup of Bellemare and what he's been able to teach the guys on this team when it comes to that part of the game. So then for the third star, I am going to go with Ryker Evans. I would normally give it to Yamamoto, but Evans gets his first NHL point, and how can you not give it to a guy that gets his first point in the NHL, especially with the way that he's been playing? And even outside of that point, he was fantastic once again in this game. Based on advanced stats, he was one of the 3 best Kraken players, and for what that's worth, he's played now 4 NHL games, and when it comes to advanced stats, he's been the best Kraken player on the ice in 2 of them. And this time he's third, so it's been a very good start to his NHL career, and like I said in the beginning, I would not expect to see him out of this lineup anytime soon. Which unfortunately does mean that Yamamoto has to be relegated to just an honorable mention, which really feels like a robbery after the game that he had, especially scoring first for the Kraken to break that streak of getting scored on first, and then also the assist, plus, it's always a soft spot because he's from Washington and all that. Also, Wennberg probably could get an honorable mention because, well, he shot the puck on an odd man rush and scored, so that's good to see. And it was his bobblehead night. All sorts of fun there. So yeah, like I said, there's just too many to choose from, which is a good problem to have, and hopefully they can just all continue to play well and we can get some of those guys mixed in future games with the 3 stars. And finally, as promised, before we close things out, that fun fact that I talked about that is no longer possible thanks to the Kraken winning this game. Which, don't get me wrong, I'm very happy that they won this game, even if it does ruin this potential fun fact that I would have at least been able to have some fun with had they lost this game. But had they lost this game and then won the game against Chicago, so they still would have had to break the losing streak in order for this to be true, it would have meant that the Kraken then had 2 9-game losing streaks in franchise history, the 2 worst losing streaks that they've ever had. This one, and then the one in the inaugural season, which actually started right around this time in middle of December, and then carried all the way through the middle of January with some postponed games there due to COVID in December of 2021. But it's not just that they have 2 9-game losing streaks in franchise history around the same time of the year. That wouldn't be a very fun fact at all, especially in the holiday season. It's that those 2 9-game losing streaks would have been bookended by wins against San Jose right before they started, and then finished with wins against the Blackhawks. And yeah, I know it's a fun fact around a lot of Kraken losing, but these are the type of things you have to have fun with things going that type of way. At the very least, it certainly would have made me look at the schedules going forward to see if there were 9-game stretches between games against the Sharks and Blackhawks for the foreseeable future. And who knows, maybe I'll do that anyway. But fortunately, it won't be necessary, as the Kraken do break up this losing streak and don't force it to have to come against Chicago. With that though, let me know what you think down in the comment section below, how much you enjoyed watching this game, how relieved we are that the Kraken finally got a win. If you're a Panthers fan, I'm sorry, thank you for getting to this point if you are a Panthers fan, and shoot, no matter who you are, thank you very much for making it to this point if you have. If you did like or enjoy this video, there are buttons for that kind of stuff, like and subscribe down below, that help support the channel, so I'd appreciate you using them. Until next time, stay safe out there, be good to each other, God bless, and go Kraken!